Gearbits the Raider Expedition. A few weeks ago, I talked about this little game called Gearbits. If you haven't seen that, you probably should for context. Also, why are you looking this up if you haven't seen or heard of the first game? Either way, the long and short of it is, it was a third-person mech shooter that had some very questionable design decisions, but was ultimately a lot of fun, and in spite of it being so rough around the edges, it had a lot of heart. Well, the developers saw my video on that, and instead of punching me through the internet, as is their right, they decided to ask, hey, you want to play the DLC early? And here we are. This DLC will be coming out as of now in about a week and a half on October 10th, to my knowledge, for about $5. And that is actually a really good price for it. I've never talked about DLC specifically, so I'm not really sure how to tackle this, but I guess we'll figure it out as we go. Now, as always, this is beta, so anything I run into, any problems, anything, that's all subject to change, but I can only talk about what I have currently. So, I will point out any issues I had. There really weren't many, but, again, all subject to being fixed. The story to the Raider Expedition takes place a little bit after the main game. The bug threat is over, and you are a raider, scavenging the waste for cool pieces of technology to sell to the highest bidder to make the most coin you can. With allegiances to no one but yourself, you set out on a quest to find some really cool tech and make some serious bank. Be careful what you wish for. You did happen to find a particularly interesting piece of tech. An alien AI core who's on a mission, trying to get information to their allies to help aid them in a war that's well beyond our understanding. Unfortunately, this AI's ship was knocked out of the sky, so she can't deliver the blueprints to help save her people from this war. But she has an idea. If you can gather bits of the ship, she might be able to transmit it across the stars and get this information where it needs to go. But you also run into some old foes along the way. It's up to you and your crew to become the ultimate raiders of the waste, while also possibly helping out in a much greater war that they themselves have no comprehension over. I like that. That's a good hook. That instantly makes you feel like this is a much bigger experience than honestly it really is, and that the world is much bigger than it is. But it shows that the developers kind of set their sights a lot higher. It's an interesting concept, and I like where it goes. The villain this time is also a lot more consistently written, and honestly just flat out a lot better. This kind of encapsulates my entire feelings about this expansion. The original game, it was a little bit rough, it was a little bit wonky in places, but this one, it feels like it hits its stride. The base game almost feels like it's a test run, they were experimenting, they were trying to figure out what this could be. This DLC, it feels like this is what it is, and it knows it. Now, when the DLC starts off, you are given 2 brand new shiny mechs of 4, thus at this point making the total volume of mechs that you can play to 17. You can access the main mechs during the DLC as well as the DLC ones just with a simple toggle of a button, and hey, what's this? Okay, there's actually a really cool feature here I didn't notice before, and I actually asked the developer about this. It's not tied to the DLC, but apparently it's just going to be rolled out for everyone. The DLC just happens to have it built in. There's now liveries for your mechs. It's not a perfect system because there's like only 3 and not every mech gets everything, but that little extra bit of customization to your mech, I approve of this. This is a cool addition. Definitely more of this, please. And these new mechs that you get for this DLC, they feel very different from the main game. True to the story, they feel better than pretty much everything in the main game. They're just flat out better because, it happens after the main game, so this is just stuff that's functionally better. Your first starting mech is equipped with wrist-mounted Gatling guns and is designed for high-speed combat. And your second one, well, it seems to be a shotgun user, which makes me really think the developer might have enjoyed War in the Pocket. I approve. But hey, that's not all. The third mech? Well, those robot bugs from the main game? You kinda get to play as one in this one, and that's really cool. I like that a lot. It's trying something a little bit different. And heck, all of the mechs in this DLC not only feel fundamentally better than the ones in the main game, just in terms of raw statistics, it feels like they're built differently as well. Specifically, it feels like each and every one of them is flat out faster than the main game's suits, and that they were designed primarily with hit and run guerrilla warfare in mind. It just feels faster and more aggressive. And honestly, the game is substantially better for that. Unfortunately, while this game does add 4 new mechs, it adds 0 new weapons. So if you didn't like anything from the main game, that's not really going to change here. Kind of a shame you don't really get anything new aside from the weapons that come pre-installed in the mechs. The developer mentioned in their comment that there would be substantially less defense missions. There are 2, back to back in the middle of the game. The first one, however, does start with an offensive phase, so you know, that's okay. And the second one, while it is a pure escort quest, the thing that you're guarding, if it gets destroyed, no problem. Just go get another one. I definitely appreciate that there is substantially less defensive missions in this because I hate them, and I appreciate that one is a lot more lax in its defensive requirements. In fact, there's actually strategic reasons you might want to destroy it and have a new one spawn closer to its target. But other than those 2, the rest of the game pretty much plays entirely offensively, which really leans into the aggressive design of these suits. You're going to be dashing around destroying opponents left, right, and center. And this game, you know, similar to how the story tells you the bugs are kind of gone, focuses primarily on mech-to-mech combat, which means your opponents are a little bit meatier and a little tankier. Taking them out is a lot more satisfying, and it just feels a lot better. And they feel a lot more varied, fast-paced, and exciting than pretty much anything the main game had, barring maybe 2 specific levels. And I gotta tell you, like, the last 3 missions in this game, they are basically what I expected Gearbits to be when I first started this. You start up level 7, and you are greeted with the mission, destroy 60 mechs. And it's a chaotic brawl of just shrapnel flying everywhere, and you just chaotically trying to dodge out of the way while shooting everything that moves. It is intense, and it feels like this game is absolutely hitting its stride for what it should be. Like, seriously, just throw in some permanent health upgrades and some randomized additional weapons that you get to keep to continue to see what your mech can do, and you've basically evolved into Armored Core EDF, which is what I expected this to be. And you know what? It hit in a really exciting way. The next level after that, likewise, it was an incredible melee of offense, but it had sort of an ebb and flow to it that no other level in this or the main game had, where you're constantly making forward movement, destroying any enemy that moves in front of you, but you have to make strategic retreats to destroy sub-objectives so that you can continue to push forward. It means that while you are actively always pushing towards your objective, you have to fall back, and that causes the enemies to sort of swarm you a little bit. This has such an awesome feel for just the flow of combat. Like I said, I don't think any other level has a feeling like this. When you pair that with the previous level that was just an all-out brawl, it feels just amazing. These 2 levels back to back are just awesome. Then you get to level 9, which is a lot slower and more introspective, and I won't talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil the end of the game, but I will say this is the only level I kind of ran into any issues or bugs, and I brought them up to the developer as well, so there's a good chance at least some of them will be fixed by the time you get to play it. Pretty much all of my problems with level 9 are just triggers with doors. When you get past like the first real encounter, there's 2 doors in the room you're in, one to the right, one to the left. They go to the same place, but the door to the left just doesn't open unless you go through the door to the right, loop around to go through the back end of the door to the left, then it opens, but only from that side for reasons I don't understand. You might think it's there to give you a quick exit on the way out, but on the way out the door's already gone, so I don't know. A couple rooms later you get to like this weird intersection with a bunch of locked doors, and honestly I thought I was soft locked. I could not find a way through this, and in fact when I did finally find a way through it, it was by destroying something through a wall. Now it turns out I just didn't find where I needed to go because it's a little bit hidden, and the developer has told me they put in some dialogue to make it a lot clearer, but this one room was a little bit awkwardly designed. Likewise, there's 2 other encounters down the way which I circumvented by shooting through walls, and when I got to the final encounter of that particular level, I ended up kind of in the room behind it, which I think is supposed to lock on you for cutscene reasons, so yeah, the doors are a little bit fiddly in this particular level, but those are the only issues I ran into this game. Were just doors being a little bit weird in one specific level. Otherwise, it's a pretty bug-free game, all things considered, you know, aside from the spider mechs. The enemies in this are largely similar to the main game. You're fighting the remnants of the bugs that are out there sometimes, but you are primarily fighting other mechs that are mostly based on ones that you can use either in the main game or in the DLC itself. However, there is one new one that really stood out to me, and it's a really high-speed mech. And like how your playable mechs feel like they're designed primarily for speed and focusing on high-speed combats and guerrilla tactics, yeah, these enemies feel like they're built for that too. And whenever one showed up, it was a really thrilling change of pace from the rest of the combat. These guys were really fun, and once again, it feels like the game hitting its stride, learning that, yeah, this game is actually kind of fun if you play it super fast and super offensively. These guys really changed the game into something special for a brief period of time. And one of my big issues about the main game of Gearbits was that it kind of ended on a weird note. Like, the final climax wasn't all that climactic. Yeah, the expansion does not have that problem. It ends on such a high, and it feels like the game is setting its sights on something so much bigger, and honestly, I want to be here for it, because it feels like everything in this game is finally clicking. Like, it's finally being not only what I expected it to be, but more what its potential was that it ultimately felt like it was missing and fell short of. This DLC has a very good feel, and well, it feels like the main game kind of stumbled around so that the expansion could run, and it does so very well. I did like the new character designs. I really particularly like the AI Ico. That's a cool design. I love the new mech designs. Two of them, like the starting one and the fourth one, I think might be like my favorites in the game, aside from maybe the Command Blue Destiny thing from the base. The designs for the mechs, very fun. Now, if you want a copy of Gearbits The Raider Expedition, it should be available, as I understand, on October 10th, 2024 for about $5, I would assume USD, which for me would make it probably about $6.50, $7, something like that. And for that, I'd say it's definitely worth it. I mean, the main game was, I think for me, about $13, and it had about 20 missions. This DLC is maybe about half the cost, and it gives you 50% more content, and it feels substantially better, faster, more fluid, and like it's really hitting its stride. Honestly, if there was a way to do so, I'd recommend you play the Raider Expedition over the main game, just because it does everything the main game did, but better and more confidently in itself. The first game, like I said, it felt like it was trying to figure out what it was, and it fumbled around a whole lot. This one, it knows what it is. It might take a little while to get there, but when it gets there, it's gonna hit you, and it's gonna hit you hard. If you like the original Gearbits, you'll probably love this. If you were a little iffy on Gearbits, it's kind of like I was. I mean, I actually really like this. It's a substantially marked improvement over the main game, and you might want to give it another go. That said, if you're not interested in this sort of thing at all, this isn't going to change your mind or anything, but, you know, it's definitely an improvement. And I have to give a huge shout out and thank you to Quack Pond Games for sending me a copy and letting me play this early. I liked Gearbits. It was rough, but it was fun. But this is awesome. And it feels like the developers have bigger ambitions, and this is leading up to that. And I can't wait to see what's next.